guys, happy Wednesday. Welcome to a huge, epic, so important lesson for today. This topic that I'm going to introduce to you today, I'm going to teach you one part today, one part tomorrow, and then Friday will just be practice. It is so big for you. I'm not even thinking about just honors geometry. I'm thinking about your algebra class the year after, because part of that class, the entire focus is trigonometry, and today I am teaching you trigonometry. So when your parents ask you what you did in e-learning today, you'd be like, oh, well, I learned trigonometry, and you're going to be serious. So super big, super important. All right, so your objective for today, you can use trigonometric ratios to find missing sides of triangles. It's the big times, my friend. This is something that I don't know how you guys are taking notes right now, to be honest. I know that some people are taking pictures of things, some people are writing things down. You're probably going to want to do a combination of both. I put a few images into this lesson that I will specifically pause on for you to take a picture of, but you will definitely need examples worked out for yourself, at least to look back on when you get to your classes next year. You'll want to look back at this and refresh your mind. So I'm telling you right now, to get your calculators ready, you have to have a calculator. You have to. If you don't have one with you, you can just Google one, and it's really quick, and I just made sure that you could do that. You also need to get your brain ready. It's going to seem like a lot at first and kind of confusing, but as soon as you understand the acronym that I teach you, it's very simple, okay? What you're going to be doing today, and we're going to come back to this problem and actually solve it at the end of the lesson. Right now, you are looking at a right triangle. Okay, you're given one angle and you're given one side length, and I'm asking you to solve for this side length here. How in the world can you do that? Now, a lot of you would say oh, well, we could use Pythagorean theorem since it's, missing side length in a right triangle, but we don't have this side here. Okay, I didn't tell you that there was a perimeter or anything. This is what we're going to be looking at. You're going to be finding side lengths of triangles when you're only given one side length and an angle. On your calculator today, these are the buttons that I'm going to be talking about: sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay, hold on, because the children are screaming at the playground. If you guys didn't know, our balcony overlooks a playground, and it's really fun. Okay, anyways, on your calculator, you're going to be using sine, cosine, and tangent. I'm sure you've seen these buttons before. Now we're actually using them today. I will be modeling on my calculator. It's a little bit different, but it'll do the job. And again, if you don't have a calculator, that's no problem. Just Google it. So when do we use Sohcahtoa? Okay, this might be the first time you're seeing it. It might not be. This is actually an acronym. Every single letter represents something. So when do we use Sohcahtoa versus the Pythagorean theorem? Now, we just talked about the Pythagorean theorem, how we can use a squared plus b squared equals c squared to find our missing sides of triangles. I'm sure you're used to seeing 3, 4, 5 here, okay? Or you can plug this into your theorem and find your missing side length. We use Sohcahtoa as a tool for when we need to find a side length, but we only have one side and one angle. Okay, that's the difference between the two. You can use Pythagorean theorem if you have two side lengths and you can just quickly calculate the third. But if you've only got one side, one angle, you're using Sohcahtoa. And here is what it means. Let's see. All right, I'm going to break it down piece by piece for you, and then I'll kind of cover all of it. So let's focus on this first part here, okay, the SOH. The S stands for sine, okay? That's the sine button on your calculator. The O stands for opposite. The H stands for hypotenuse. Take a look at my diagram. If I'm looking at angle B, okay, I see that I've got the opposite right here. Opposite means it's across, and then this is my hypotenuse. So if you have the opposite and the hypotenuse, you would use the sine, and we set it up as a ratio or a fraction. All right, hang tight. Again, this might be confusing at first, but once I go through it a few times, you'll start to pick up on it. All right, so now if I'm looking at cosine, notice in my acronym that the two letters after, so C stands for cosine, A stands for adjacent, H stands for hypotenuse. So if I'm looking at angle B, this is my adjacent side, and then this is a hypotenuse because it's across from your right angle. When we write cosine, we write it as a ratio, which will be as a fraction. Then the last function is in your acronym is TOA, which is tangent. Tangent, because it's OA, it's going to be opposite over adjacent. So if I'm looking again at angle B, here's my opposite side over my adjacent. Okay, here's the first one you might want to take a picture of. If this didn't resonate as much with you, I'm going to show you a different diagram to kind of help you out. All right, so here it is again. If I'm looking at just angle A, okay, I'm just looking at angle A here. The sine of angle A, okay, if it's sine, that means I'm going to have opposite over hypotenuse, would be A over C, because it's my opposite side over my hypotenuse. Okay, if I'm looking at the cosine of A, cosine, that's this part of my acronym, and I see AH. That means my adjacent side, this is adjacent. It's next to the angle. So that's going to be B over my hypotenuse, which is C. Then for the last part, if I'm looking at the tangent of A, in my acronym, tangent is TOA, okay, TOA, opposite over adjacent. That means it'll be my opposite side, the one that's across from my angle, A, and then adjacent, which would be my B. Let me show you one more time, and then we'll go into a few examples. So this is just another way of showing you if you want to take a quick picture. Personally, when my teachers introduced it to me like this, it didn't make as much sense. When I saw it in examples, it made more sense. But now going back as a teacher, I just wanted to front load a little bit, and then I'll show you some examples. So here we are. Let's start with the basics, and let's just set up ratios, okay? If I were you, as you're going through with your homework and your lessons, make sure that you have this acronym written literally everywhere. Okay, if I asked you to find the sine of angle B, okay, I highlighted angle B. Sine means opposite over adjacent. So my opposite side is 8 over, H stands for hypotenuse. My hypotenuse is going to be 17 because it's across from my right angle, over 17. So, okay, that looks absolutely terrible. So if I asked you to write a ratio for the sine of angle B, it would be 8 over 11 because it's opposite over hypotenuse. If I asked you for the cosine of B, cosine is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. My adjacent side for angle B is 15. So it's going to be 15 over my hypotenuse is 17. If I asked you for the tangent of angle B, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So for B, the opposite side is 8 over the adjacent side, which is 15. Now, that is just setting up ratios to make sure that we understand what we're talking about. Now we're going to get into the actual practice of solving for missing sides. So here we go. Buckle up. When you're asked to find a missing side of a triangle, this is what I do in my head. So step 1, I identify the angle. Okay, that often just means that I either highlight it or I circle it. So there's my angle. Then I need to identify what's my given side. So in terms of this angle here, my given side, 15, is that an opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse? Well, I see that it's across from my right angle, so that has to be the hypotenuse. So I'm given a hypotenuse. Now my unknown side is across from my given angle, which means that it's opposite. So if I have opposite and I have hypotenuse, look at your acronym. What's the only function that has opposite and hypotenuse? It's going to be this part here, and that tells you that you're going to be using the function sine. So the sine of 48, okay, because 48 is your angle, okay, we need opposite over hypotenuse. The opposite side is x because we don't know it. The hypotenuse is 14. So I set up my ratio. Here's my angle. If I'm using sine, it's opposite over hypotenuse. Now, how do I solve for x? If I've got a denominator here and I need to get rid of it so that I can isolate x, how do you undo division? Tell me it's multiplication. So then I do times 14 over here and times 14 here, okay? Because when you do that, they cancel out. In your calculator, here's all that you need to type in. You're going to type in 14 times sine 48. That's how I did it. And we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So you'll get 10.4. Let's try that again with a new example. Again, if you're not getting it right away, you're totally fine. You might need all of the examples until you form your full understanding. Okay, I'm actually going to do this. Let's do this one first. Okay, so step one, we see that we have one angle, we have one side length, and we have to find this unknown side length. Okay, I know I have to use Sohcahtoa and either sine, cosine, or tangent to do so. The challenge is just figuring out which one it is. So step one, let's identify our given angle. I see that it's right here and it is 60. My given side, that's right here, is adjacent because it's right next to it. The unknown side, what I'm solving for, because it's across from it, it's going to be opposite. Then ask yourself, which function uses opposite and adjacent, O and A? And it is tangent. Because look, this is the only one that has O and it has A. So I know that it's going to be set up like this. The tangent of 60, okay, 60 is your angle, is opposite side is x over adjacent, which is 13. Similar to the last problem, if we want to get x by itself here, okay, we multiply both sides by 13. That's supposed to be a 13. When you do that, those cancel out, and then in your calculator, clear it out. All you need to type in is 13 times tan 60. And click enter. When you do that, we're going to round to the nearest tenth, and you get about 22.5. Let's go back to this one here. Same thing. You've got an angle, you've got a side length, and you need to find a side length. You're going to use Sohcahtoa as your strategy to do so. So let's highlight the angle that we have. It's 51. Our given side, the one that we have, is next to it, which means that it's adjacent. The side that we're looking for is our hypotenuse. Notice because it's across from the right angle. What function uses adjacent and hypotenuse, A and H? Hopefully you see that it's this one right here because you see A and H. That means it's going to be cosine. So the cosine of 51, because that's our angle, is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Our adjacent side is 10, our hypotenuse is x. This is a little bit different. If you looked in our other examples, x was always in the numerator, but now x is in the denominator. So you had to go through one extra step. To get x out of the denominator, we're going to multiply both sides by x. So it looks like this, times x times x. When you do that, that eliminates, these are gone, and you're left with x times cosine 51 equals 10. To isolate x and get it by itself, if it's being multiplied by cosine of 51, we're going to divide both sides by cosine of 51. So when you do that, these eliminate. This is the actual mathematics operation that you're going to have to do. So clear your calculator. Do 10 divided by cosine 51. And click enter. And you should get, if you round to the nearest tenth, about 15.9. Let's try one more example and then I'll recap for you. All right, this is the original problem that I led off with. You're given an angle, one side length, and you need to find the other one. So identify your angle. Already did it for you. It's 20. Our given side is across from that angle, which means that it's opposite. Right here. Our unknown side is the hypotenuse because it's across from my right angle. So here I am. If my highlighter wouldn't disappear, that would be cool. So I've got opposite and hypotenuse. Where do you see opposite and hypotenuse? Well, I see that right here, which means that I'm using the sine function. So the sine of 20, okay, because 20 is our angle, is equal to 10 over r, opposite over hypotenuse. This is another problem though. When you've got this r in the denominator, we're going to multiply it to both sides. So it looks like this. Okay, we multiplied it over here. When we did it on this side, it canceled out. So now I've got r times sine 20 equals 10. All you need to do is divide both sides by sine of 20, and you get about 29.24. Let me recap the lesson for you. When you are faced with a right triangle, and you are asked to find an unknown side, but you only have one angle and you only have one side length, we have to use Sohcahtoa. Sohcahtoa is just an acronym to help us remember what type of ratios to set up with sine, cosine, and tangent. These are the buttons that we use on our calculator. When we identify with our different angles, like the angle that we have and the side length we need and that we need to find, okay? If we're using sine, that means that we're using opposite over hypotenuse as our ratio. If we're using cosine, that means we're using our adjacent over our hypotenuse as our ratio. If we're using tangent, that means we're using opposite over our adjacent. Remember that if I'm looking at angle A here, the opposite side is always across from that angle. The adjacent is always touching it. It's right next to it. Hypotenuse, you know that that's always across from our right angle. When you are looking to find a missing side length, all you need to do is set up with sine, cosine, or tangent and plug your angle in right there and set up a ratio based on what you have and what you need to find. You then just need to solve for x. I think that that is it. I think that's all. I know that that was a huge lesson, so much new information, new acronym, new calculator functions, but if you need me, I'm always here for questions. Tomorrow I'm going to teach you how to find missing angles, and then Friday's just a practice day, and that'll be the last math assignment that you have that's math related. Next year we'll do like reflection stuff, or next week, sorry. Okay, so your assignment for today is the trig ratio Schoology check. This is something that if you do not get them all correct, I would really like you to go back and do it again, because I know for a fact this is going to be so important for high school. All right, you guys are amazing. Thank you for working hard. See ya.